intro, I'm Ms. Olajumoke Awonuga, and the founder of Olive Grove Educational Consults. And this afternoon, we're going to be having a training on raising strong readers. Raising strong readers. Now, what's prompted me to do this training is that I've seen a lot of students that have issues with reading, even in the secondary school. I actually teach biology in a school, and then I've seen students that have reading difficulty even at that stage. So, if the issue of reading can be dealt even from the early years, it will save a lot of students the headache of having reading difficulty. And also, when a child has good reading skill, there's high probability that a child will be able to do well in every other subject he might find himself because of the ability to read. So, raising strong readers is a training hosted by Olive Grove Educational Consult. So, I want to indulge your attention. You can get a material to jot so that you can flow, and I'm going to be sharing my screen immediately. So thank you for joining. If there's any question, please put it in the comment section, and at interval we're going to be seeing all about those questions. At least we'll be able to answer them at the end of the training. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining. I'm going to be sharing my screen now. All right, so raising strong readers, early detection and solution for reading struggles. Early detection and solution for reading struggles. So that's the topic of this training. Now, what do we stand to gain? We're going to be understanding the foundation of reading. We're going to identify reading struggles early. That means, how can we identify reading struggles? We're also going to be looking at the Montessori approach to reading, digital tools in enhancing reading, and practical strategies for strengthening reading skills. Now, this training is for parents, for teachers, for caregivers, or for any of us that have younger children around us, or anybody that maybe have reading difficulty, or you want to help enhance a child's reading ability. So this training is specifically for you. All right, so let's look at the first quote there. It says, "Never give up on a child who is struggling to read. With the right help, they can overcome any obstacle." Any obstacle. I once taught with younger children, and yes, sometimes it can be really, really difficult when you have a child who struggles to read. It can be very, very difficult on the aspect of the child, and also on the aspect of the teacher or the parent. It can be very, very difficult. But the most important thing there is never give up, because once you give up on that child at that particular time, you demoralize the child, and it becomes way too difficult for the child to be able to, come up or come out of that struggle. So never give up. That's the key word there. Never give up on a child who is struggling to read. So if you have any child who is struggling to read around you, maybe a younger child or a teenager, the first thing you have to work on is your mind as a parent or as a teacher, that you shouldn't give up on that child. So this training is designed for parents and teachers to understand how children develop reading skills, how to identify early signs of reading struggles, and apply effective Montessori aligned strategies for reading intervention. So let's go. Now, the first is understanding the foundation of reading. Now, research by Stanovic in 1986, he spoke about what we call the Matthew effect in reading. Now, what did he say, or what is the Matthew effect? He says that early reading success leads to continued growth, while delay can also result in long term struggle. So, what he means is that if a child can read early, there's probability that there's going to be a record of success. If along the child's academic line, there's going to be a success because the child will have the ability to be able to read other areas, even just aside English. Now, I'm not just talking about English, but the child will be able to read other areas of study. So, if the child has a great success in reading, then there is probability that there's going to be success in its continued growth. But once there's a delay or there's a struggle with reading, then we can begin to see long-term struggles in other academic areas. Now, number two person that we're going to be looking at is Vygotsky zone of proximal development, that's ZPD. Now, what he says is that there's a space between what a learner can do independently and what they can do with a support. Now, this is where parents, teachers, and caregivers come in. The fact that a child can do something independently does not mean that we now leave the entire ball game to that child. So there's a space between the child, what he can do or what he can read, and there's a person who is known as a more knowledgeable individual. And this is a person that helps to bring or helps to cover the gap where the child is having a reading difficulty. So a student might be able to read simple sentences independently, but might struggle with longer sentences. So the function of the more knowledgeable person there is to be able to bring that child from the point of reading simple words to the point of reading longer words. So that's what Vygotsky zone of proximal development mean. Then another person we're going to be looking at is the Montessori perspective, and she says that children absorb learning unconsciously during their early years. Now, one interesting thing about the Montessori approach is that she identified what we call sensitive period. Now, in a child's sensitive period, the child is able to assimilate language effortlessly from about 0 years to about 6 years. So the child is able to assimilate language, the child is able to learn language. And that is why at this period of time, a child can conveniently learn 7 languages concurrently. I mean 7, yes. If that child is well groomed, the child can learn 7 languages concurrently. So this window, this specific window that the child can learn language is at this period where, as teachers or as parents or as caregivers, we should take advantage of this stage, because whatever you present to the child at that particular time, the child is able to assimilate. So Montessori perspective says children absorb language unconsciously. So as parents or as teachers that teach children within this age group, let us maximize the window that they are to be able to teach them, to be able to grasp the concept of reading. Now, how children learn to read. How do children learn to read? Number one, we're going to be looking at the natural progression, which starts from oral language to phonemic awareness to letter recognition to fluency and comprehension. I'll take it again. From oral language to phonemic awareness to letter recognition to fluency and then to comprehension. Now, what is oral language? Oral language, this is the foundation of reading and writing. It involves developing skills in listening, speaking, and understanding a language, and that is the first step. A child might not necessarily know how to read, he might not necessarily know how to write, but he would understand that language of the environment he finds himself. I can give an example. There was a time some certain people packed into our environment, into our compound, and at a point the child does not even understand English. Like the child doesn't understand English at all. But in within the space of less than a year, when he began to mingle with other children in the compound and the rest, he started speaking English. The child started speaking English. There was no serious teaching, come sit down. There was no serious teaching per se for the child to be able to understand that language, but just mingling, just interacting, the child was able to understand the English language. So oral language, that's the first step of a child learning to read, is understanding the language. So this is the process where the child listens, the child speaks, and the child understands the language that is being spoken to him. So once we have a child in our class, for example, and the child is not reading or the child is not writing, especially teachers, let us start from the standpoint of, okay, does the child understand? Is the child listening? Is the child speaking the language? Now, if the child is doing all these things, we can say, okay, yes, this is the first step in the child reading. Now, the next step is phonemic awareness. Now, phonemic, this involves understanding the individual sounds in a spoken word. It includes skills like blending sounds to make words, segmenting words into sound, and rhyming. So phonemic awareness is saying that, okay, the child begins to understand the individual sound, and that's where learning the sounds of the alphabet now comes in. The child now begins to learn individual sounds of the alphabet, where we have the sound A, the sound B, D, and the rest. The child now begins to learn the individual sound. So when the child can learn the individual sound in a word, he now begins to blend. So this blending now leads the child to reading a word. So when we understand this progression, when we have a child who is struggling in our class, or we have a child at home that is struggling, let us see, okay, at what stage is the child struggling with? Is he struggling with phonemic awareness? Is it that he cannot sound the letters? Okay, if he can sound the letters, they will know that, okay, we progress to blending. Then he begins to learn how to blend. So this is a progression. Now the next, number 3 there, is letter recognition. This involves learning the names and sound of the letter. Now, don't confuse it with phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness says individual sound, while letter recognition says he now learns the name and then the sound. Now, for letter A, the name of that letter is A, while the sound is A. So the child now begins to differentiate between the letter name and the letter sound. So when a child can distinguish between these two things, then blending or pronouncing the word becomes more easy. And most times for younger children, they start with letter A sounds they teach them the letter name and then the sound. But it's always good to isolate a concept at a time. So once you're starting, always start with the sound, because the child has to become phonemic aware first before the letter recognition. And then once the child can understand the name of the letter, then can now proceed to writing and the rest. So number 4, phonics. Now phonics teaches the relationship between the letters and their sound. Remember, previously we saw letter recognition, that's the name. Now phonics is now saying, okay, the child should be able to relate letter A to the sound A. So anytime he sees letter A, he can say this is letter A, but it sounds A. So at this point, the child is learning the letter name and is being able to sound it. So phonics teaches the relationship between letters and their sounds, helping students decode words. It builds on phonemic awareness and letter recognition. Now, number 5 is fluency. Now, it is the ability of the child to be able to read accurately, quickly, and with proper expression. It involves recognizing words automatically and reading smoothly. Now, for a child to be able to get to this stage, there must be series of phonemic awareness. There must be series of letter recognition. There must be a series of word blending. It's a progression. So once the child has begin to is able to do all these things, then fluency comes in. It's just that sometimes as teachers, we want the child to be able to read a whole textbook, which is not always the point. Let us start with CVC words. 3-line sentences, or three line sentences for the child to read. When a child can read the 3-line effectively, we can say that the child has attained fluency in that particular spot. So fluency is the ability to read quickly and with proper expression. It involves recognizing words automatically. That means once the child sees that word, he's able to say, "Oh, this is cat," because he has gone through series of word blending and the rest. So the last is number 6, which is comprehension. This is the ability to understand what is being read. It requires a strong vocabulary, decoding skills, and the ability to make connection between prior knowledge. So comprehension is the ability of the child to now understand what he reads. It's not just reading now, he's understanding what he's reading. So that's why when you want to get books for your children, you have to be very, very cautious. You have to know the stage that child is, know the stage you want to take that child to. So once you are getting a book, get a book that the child can easily comprehend. We shouldn't get books with so much big words, because yes, we want our children to be reading books. No, we should get the one that they can easily comprehend. So if you can get a storybook that has, "Oh, this is a cat, the cat sat on a mat," books like that, depending on the age and depending on the level of that child. If you know that, okay, yes, this child have grown not in age now, but in his phonemic and awareness, in his ability to blend, in his ability to be able to read, you know that, okay, yes, my child has grown beyond this level. You now get a book, you increase the level of that child. So you ask questions. That's to show that, okay, this child understand what he's reading. So with the example I'm giving, this is a cat, the cat sat on a mat. So you can ask the questions, okay, where is the cat sitting? What's the color of the cat? That and that and that and that. It helps you to understand, or helps us to see if the child comprehended what he has read. Now, how children learn to read. So the first one we saw was number 1, natural progression. And I said it goes from oral language, that's speaking the language, to phonemic awareness, to letter recognition, to fluency and comprehension. Now, the next method that we're going to be seeing is the Montessori method. Now, according to the Montessori method developed in the early 1900s, children learn best by exploring and manipulating materials. In my last training section, we dealt on hands-on material, and that's the same thing with reading. If you want the child to be able to read effectively, we must explore manipulating materials. That's the word. Didactic materials that they can dismantle, they can work with. And then you begin to wonder, reading is more abstract. Can we make it hands-on per se? Yes, reading can be hands-on. We have so many reading materials that can be hands-on, that the child can work with. We have alphabet, we have letters that can be hands-on. And if your child have moved from the point of CVC words and is not doing more of blends, reading more of large letters and all, you can get books that's, something that can make the child engaged. So that can make the child engage. You can do role play reading, you can do lap reading, you can do a lot of activities, but ensure that it is hands-on. So sensory materials, self-directed learning, prepared environment, and sensitive period is what Montessori approach stand on. Using of materials, using of self-directed learning, prepared environments, and sensitive period. So how the child learns to read, we've seen the natural progression, and we've seen the Montessori method. Now, the role of phonemic awareness and comprehension. According to Adams, 1990, she said phonemic awareness is the strongest predictor of reading success. Adams' work highlighted that phonemic awareness is a foundational skill for reading, meaning it is a necessary building block for later reading success. So, for reading to take place, there must be phonemic awareness. That is the individual sound. So, if you have a child in secondary school, per se, a teenager, and that teenager is struggling with reading, I'm sorry, he's not going to get it reading the textbooks. He's not going to get it that way. You have to bring the student back. Where has he lost it? Where is he struggling with? Is he struggling with sounding the letters? Is he struggling with blending? Is he struggling with blends? Is he struggling with phonemic sounds? What is he struggling with? You have to be able to decode and say, okay, this is where this child is. Let us meet the child where the child is and then progress. So you have to understand, where is that child? Where is his level of understanding? Where is his level of comprehension? And then we move with that child. So we now move the child to where we want him to be, coming from where that child is. So it says prior knowledge helps in reading comprehension. So you cannot throw away what the child already knows. For you to be able to identify where this child is struggling with, you have to understand where the child is in his reading ability. So identifying reading struggles early. Let's look at some common signs of reading struggles. So how do I know that my child is struggling with reading? Number one, slow and labored reading. The individuals may read slowly, making it difficult to keep up with the pace of the text and understanding its meaning. So what this is saying is that the child will read extremely slow, like extremely slow. And there's going to be a lot of labor. The child is struggling, he's trying to pronounce one word at a time. There's struggle with identifying the words. So that's what we call slow and labored reading. Excuse me. Number two, we have difficulty sounding out words. Trouble decoding new words, even those that follow phonetic patterns, can be a sign of reading difficulty. So when a child have the inability to, decode a new word, you could have taught the child CVC words, and then the child sees a blend, like example, flag. You've taught the child cats, bats, and then the child sees words like flag, or sees a sight word, for example, like look, those words that don't follow the phonetic sound, like, for example. Then the child begins to struggle. So you know that, okay, yes, the child is struggling with this particular kind of words. So trouble decoding new words, even those that follow phonetic patterns, can be a sign of reading difficulty. Another point is difficulty learning and retaining sight words. These are common words that don't follow phonetic rules, and struggle to recognize them quickly can impact reading fluency. So when the child have difficulty in identifying sight words, now there's a way we teach sight words to children. We don't just assume the child should know it. Most times we just assume, the child should know this word. No. There's a way we teach the child sight words. The sight words must be intentionally taught. And that's why as parents, when you get a book, or as teachers, when you get a book, I want this child to be able to read this book, you yourself as an individual person, look through the book, read through the book, bring out all the sight words in that book. Identify all the sight words in that book. Then begin to teach the child intentionally, one after the other. each of those sight words. Give the child flashcard. Let the child, you can paste it on the walls in the room or in the class. Let the child continue to see it. Let him continue to read it. Let him continue to pronounce it. Then when you have taught the sight words, you will now give that child that book to read. You don't just buy a book and just give it to the child. No, you yourself look through the book, read the book, identify the big words or the sight word, bring out the sight words, intentionally teach the sight words to the child before giving that child the book to read. Now, poor spelling problems, especially with common words or words that don't follow phonetic pattern, can be an indicator of reading difficulties. Now, as parents or as teachers, we should cultivate or bring back dictation. I don't know, I just feel like dictation is going out now. We should bring back dictation. Now, if you've given a child that book and the child has read the book over time, give the child dictation. Let the child spell. Just call out the words. Let the child begin to learn how to spell it. So once you've taught the child the words, teach the child the spelling. Let the child do dictation over and over and over again. So that once you want to go into a new book, you would have satisfied your consciousness that yes, this child has been able to digest this book. The child has been able to read the book. The child has been able to spell out the words. So that when he goes into a new book and sees those words, it is no longer a struggle. So spelling, when the child is struggling with spelling, then we can say the child has reading problems. Comprehension issue. Even with accurate word recognition, difficulty understanding the meaning of what has been read can be a sign of a reading problem. And that is why every word we have in a book, when you give a child a book, ask questions. Like the example I gave, a cat sat on a mat, or the fat cat sat. Ask questions. Where did the cat sit? What is the color of the mat? How does the cat sit on the mat? Just ask questions. When you ask these questions, it prompts the child to read it again. So once the child reads it again, it prompts comprehension. But so when you keep on saying that the child is unable to answer this question, then you can vividly say that the child has not comprehended that particular word that he has read. So comprehension can start from a sentence. Once a sentence is being read, ask questions to see if the child has comprehended that particular sentence that has been read to him. So if the child has the inability to comprehend, then we can say it is a sign of reading problem. Other signs, they include matching sounds to letters, having difficulty finding the right word to use, struggle with rhyming, or even avoiding to read. When you call the child to read, the child is avoiding to read. You can say it is a sign of it's a sign of reading difficulty. Avoidance of book, frustration, or guess word instead of decoding. I've worked with children, once they just see the word like they'll just call anything. They'll just call any word that just comes to their mind and you'll be like, what did you just say? When the child just gets a word from the blues. Maybe the child saw something like look, and then just said anything that just came to his mind. As guess word reading, the child just guess it. Then you can say that yes, the child is struggling with reading. Or maybe the child is trying to blend, and because he's frustrated in blending, he just guess a word. Then you know that that child is struggling with reading. But that is not where it ends. Let's look at learning disorder. Now, apart from the fact that, please permit me to take it back, we might have seen all these issues in children reading, but we also have to identify that there might be a disorder, because most times some children may have reading disorder, and because parents or teachers do not have the ability to identify this disorder, it now begins or becomes a problem for the child. You say, oh, at least at this age, the child is supposed to be able to read this, and this. And the child is not being able to read it. But because you don't know that the child has a disorder, you begin to put the child under so many pressure. The child is so frustrated with reading. And at the end of it all, the child begins to even avoid reading in the last run. Is because we've not been able to identify the particular problem. So if you've looked at all these that has been mentioned, and you can say, okay, I've tried to deal with each of these issues. It might be that the child have a learning or reading disorder. So that will take us to learning disorder, which is dyslexia. Dyslexia is a neurological difficulty. It is not a lack of intelligence. Please let me read that again. Dyslexia is a neurological difficulty. It is not a lack of intelligence. So when a child has dyslexia, we should not say the child is not intelligent. That's what it means. So dyslexia is a type of learning disorder that impairs an individual's capacity to read, to write, and spell with precision and fluency despite having normal vision. The child might be doing well in mathematics. The child might be doing well with numbers. The child might be doing well with other areas. But when it comes to reading, his inability to read, his inability to write, his inability to spell with precision and fluency. I'm not saying that the child is struggling now. You have done this particular work with the child over a number of time, but the child is still finding it difficult to read. The child is still finding it difficult to write. The child is still finding it difficult to spell. We can say that the child has learning disorder, or we can say that the child has dyslexia. It is a neurological condition that is believed to have genetic basis and affect phonological processing. That is the key there, and I'm going to be using my cursor to identify that. Phonological processing. Now when we flash back to the previous slides, and when we're looking at phonics, we said it is of phonological or phonemic awareness. We said it is the ability of the child to be able to recognize individual sound. So when the child is not able to process the sounds, right, we can now say that child could have a learning disorder, or we call it dyslexia. So apart from dyslexia, we have another learning disorder that we call working memory deficits. Now what this is that working memory is the brain's ability to temporarily hold and process information for immediate use. Working memory deficits holds back learning. Difficulty in holding and processing a sound. You've taught the child the sound, but the inability for the child to process, to bring back that sound when he sees it in a new word, could be working memory deficit. It means that, okay, you've taught the sound, the letter A, for example, and then the child sees a word that you've not taught him. For example, he sees the word cat, and maybe you've not taught the word cat to the child, but the child is finding it difficult to be able to remember. He's now struggling, inability to remember, inability to bring back the information from his memory. We can say that the child is having a working memory deficit. So each of all of this disorder is not saying we should give up on the child, or the reading struggle, or the common signs. It's not saying, okay, we should just give up on the child like that and say, oh, this child, I've tried for you. If you like, learn. If you like, don't learn. And that will flash us back to the introduction when I says a child can have difficulty in reading, but we should not give up on that child. So not giving up will help us, or will prompt us to seek other means of which we can help the child. And that's where the role of digital tools in early detection of reading struggles. So we have Lexia Core 5. Assessing phonemic awareness and word recognition. It's a digital tool, it's an app. We can always explore that app. So it gives us series of words where the child begins to read, and there's an assessment tool there to show that okay, the child might be having a working memory issue, or the child might be having dyslexia. Now, Dibosta Orthograph identifies and supports children with dyslexia. This is an app specially made for children with dyslexia. Then we have Reading Rocket Screener, helps parents and teachers to track reading milestone. So we can say that okay, the child has moved from this point to this point in his reading journey. We can be able to track the child's level of reading. We can say, okay, we've moved from CVC words to blends. We've moved from blends to letter sounds and the rest. So we're able to track the child's reading milestones. Now let's look at some Montessori materials that is necessary for early reading. So you might have diagnosed the child, you might have seen reading struggles, you might have seen slow reading pattern, inability to identify sight words, and all of that. So what do we now do? Now, according to the Montessori approach, we have some materials that we use for reading. Children learn to recognize sounds from words and write complete sentences all through activities that stimulate their curiosity, which creates an environment in which children are not afraid to experiment or make mistakes. So, example of materials, we have the sandpaper letters, we have the movable alphabets, the pink, blue, and the green series, digital, and we also have some digital supports for Montessori reading. Now, sandpaper letters, from the word sandpaper. This is an hands-on material that helps the child to be able to feel. It's tactile, it's hands-on. The child is able to feel the letters. He's not just reading, he's able to feel it. So when the child traces, and that will also help the child in writing. So the child is able to trace each of the letters, because it's sandpaper. The child has a tactile feeling, tactile learning for the letter sound recognition. So the child is able to trace, and the child is able to feel. And because the child is feeling, it is sending impressions to the brain. Remember, children are sensorial explorers. They learn with their senses. So when the child is seeing with his eyes, is tracing with his hand, there's a tactile information that is being sent to the brain, and the child is able to recollect. So if you have a child who is struggling with identifying letter sound, please introduce the sandpaper letters to that child, because the hands are pathways to human intelligence. The child is able to feel, recollect. So when the child sees that word, he remembers what he has felt and is able to recollect it. And then we have the movable alphabet. We have the pink, the blue, and the green series. This is a step-by-step progression from simple to complex words. Later on, Olive Grove Educational Consult is going to run training on the pink, blue, and the green series. So stay tuned. Now we also have digital support for Montessori reading. We have apps like Montessori Word and Phonics app. So please, we can check it up on Play Store. We also have Star for Reading. These particular apps are censored particularly to the Montessori approach. They obey the Montessori colors and the rest, and it is very, 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 very important that we go through those apps and we check up on them. And I would like to have our feedback if any of us actually went through those apps. So addressing specific reading challenges. Now, letter reversals and visual processing issue. There was one time I was working with a particular child, and the child was always reversing letter B and D. Anytime she wants to write B, she'll write D. she was always reversing it, or she was always mixing it up. Or a child wants to write C to the left and he writes C to the right. So all those are letter reversals, and I had to do my thumb for her. So my left thumbs up is a B, right? While my right thumbs up is a D. So that's how we're able to overcome that letter issue. So once she wants to write B, all she needs to do is, okay, my left. So she raises her left and then she's able to trace it. And then she's able to say, okay, yes, this is B. And then when she wants to write her D, she raises her right hand and it gives her the D. So with that, over time, she stopped raising her hand because she was able to, detect where the two of them was coming from. So letter reversals and visual processing issue, what do? We encourage multi-sensory learning. Mirror writing. Get a mirror, let the child scribble on the mirror. Mirror writing. We can also do the sandpaper letter tracing and all those things. Those are multi-sensory. The child is seeing, the child is writing with his hands, the child is feeling with his hands. Those are multi-sensory learning. We also have NESI learning programs which supports children with dyslexia. So you can check that up online. NESI learning program. This is where my cursor is showing. NESI learning program. Now, when a child is struggling with weak phonemic awareness and decoding struggle, what do? Using reading eggs for guided phonics learning. You can also check that up online. It is called reading eggs, and it also helps to guide children in phonetic learning. All these apps, we can explore them. Please let us, especially teachers, as teachers, we cannot stop learning. Let us explore each of these apps to see how they can be useful in our classes, and also for parents too. We can also explore each of those apps. Attention and focus issue in reading. Now, a lot of children, they are not focused, so you have to give them something that will keep them seated. The reading has to be interesting to them. If not, they will lose focus. So breaking reading tasks into small, manageable chunks. So instead of just giving the child the whole book, and the child has seen the whole book, and the child is already feeling discouraged, is already feeling frustrated, you can start with books with a sentence page and then pictures. You can do picture reading. Exactly. You can start with picture reading. Captivate the attention of the child. You can start with picture reading. Then from picture reading, you can go into 1 sentence per page. Then you can go to 3 sentences per page with pictures. This will captivate the attention of the child. Okay, so the role of parents and teachers in literacy development. I'm going to pause a little bit. Let me just take a recap of what we've done so far, and hope I'm not moving too fast. So far so good. We've looked at the understanding the foundation of reading, where we saw the Matthew effects, the Montessori perspective, and Vygotsky zone of proximal development. And then we saw how children learn to read. We saw the natural progression, in which we progress from oral language to phonemic awareness to letter recognition, fluency, and comprehension. And then we saw the Montessori approach to reading, which emphasizes on the hands-on materials. And then we went to the role of phonemic awareness and comprehension. And then we take a look at Adams and schema theory. Schema emphasized on prior knowledge, and Adams, she identified on phonemic awareness. And then we also saw some common signs of reading difficulty. We saw slow and labored reading, difficulty sounding out words, difficulty learning and retaining sight words, phonetic poor spelling, comprehension issues, And we saw avoidance of book, frustration, guess reading, or avoidance of reading as a whole. And then we identified the issue on dyslexia. What dyslexia means? We said dyslexia is a neurological difficulty and not a lack of intelligence. And a child with dyslexia should not be given up on, but more work should be done on the side of both the teacher and the parents. And then we saw some digital tools that can help in detecting reading struggles. We saw Lexia Core 5, Debuster Orthographs, Reading Rocket Screener. These are tools, digital tools that we can explore. Please ensure you do that. And then we saw some Montessori materials that help in early reading, the sandpaper letters, the movable alphabet, the pink, blue, and the green series, and some Montessori digital apps, which is Montessori Word and Phonics apps, and Style for Reading. These are apps that specifically talk about the Montessori reading approach. And then we address some specific reading challenge. We look at the letter reversal, the weak phonemic awareness and decoding struggles, attention and focus issues in reading. Okay, so let's go on. The role of parents and teachers in literacy development. Now, when we started, we looked at the maths. We looked at Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, and he identified something there. He said that the child needs a support from a more knowledgeable order. And this more knowledgeable order is someone who is more knowledgeable in the aspect of reading. And who are the people that are more knowledgeable? That's the parents, the caregivers, the teachers. So what are the roles of this more knowledgeable order in literacy development? Now, first of all, let's look at the parents. How parents can support reading at home. Number one, establish daily reading routine. There was a time I told my students, I said, reading is a skill. Truth be told. You know the way we go to learn tailoring, how we learn hairdressing, shoemaking, or any other skill, maybe a digital skill, and the rest. Reading is also a skill. And it's so painful now that this skill is being lost, especially among students. I've seen a lot of situations where students can't sit down to read. But when you look at it critically, most times it's not their fault, because habits grow. Habits grow. We don't just wake up one day and begin to do something. No, it grows. So reading is a skill. So as parents, we have to be intentional, especially when we have younger children. Please be intentional about their reading skill. Tell your child, you are going to spend 20 minutes today in reading. And that 20 minutes, you have to give that child that 20 minutes. Don't just tell the child, go inside and go and read, and then you just leave the child to himself. No. If you say you're going to be reading 20 minutes, be intentional with that child for that 20 minutes. Set a daily reading routine. It is very, very important. And I know why I keep on emphasizing it. Number two, choosing developmentally appropriate books. So what that means is that choose books that are within the child's developmental stage. You have a child within the age of, let's say, 3.5, 4 years old, and then you are buying books of 7 years for the child. It doesn't work that way. So when you are getting books, story books for the child, or you're getting any book you want the child to read, get a book that is within the reading stage of that child. And if you want to get a book that is a little bit higher, then you know that you have to put in a lot of work to take the child from where he is to where you want him to be with that book. Now, for teachers, how teachers can create a supportive reading environment. Number one, using Montessori's 3-period lesson to reinforce literacy concepts, digital classroom integration, Seesaw interactive reading portfolio, RAS Kids personalized digital reading practice. Now, Seesaw and RAS Kids are also digital tools we can use. Now, using Montessori 3-period lesson to reinforce literacy skill. When we are doing the reading guide or the reading step-by-step guide, it's a training that the Olive Grove is going to also go into. That is going to give us a breakdown. So we're also going to deal with the Montessori 3-period lesson, how teachers can use the 3-period lesson, especially to teach sight words. Remember, I told you there's a way we teach sight words. We don't just teach sight words like that. No, we teach sight words using the 3-period lesson intentionally, and there's how we teach it, and there's how we receive feedback from the child to know if the child has been able to get that particular sight words. So stay tuned for that training section. Okay, so before our conclusion and takeaway, I'm going to do a recap for parents. Please establish a daily reading routine. Very, very important. And when you are getting books, get books that are appropriate for that child. For teachers, we have using the Montessori 3-period lesson, and advice to teachers on this platform is that be intentional. Don't give up on any child that has reading difficulty. I am going to quickly share one of my experience I had with a particular child while I was teaching younger children. This child, when he came into my class, he struggled with reading. And one thing I did was that I was intentional about that child. And I said, before this child will leave my class, this child will read. I don't know how it will happen, but this child will read. And I went online, I did a lot of research, and then I began to give the child placards. I write words I want the child to read from his book. I'm going to bring out all the words that are difficult there. I'll give the child, we're going to learn the sight words. I'll give the child, take it home, go and read it, bring it back to me tomorrow. When he brings it back to me, as he's giving me, he's reading it to me. As he's giving me the word, he's spelling the word to me. He's telling me the meaning of the word. He's saying everything that has to do with that word. When I collect it back from him, I give him another one. After like 3 days, I give him back the 3 words. All and all and all and all. And all of these things just to ensure that I move the child from a place where he struggled with reading to a place where we can conveniently say that yes, this child has advanced. So as teachers, don't give up on any child, irrespective of the age of the child. I work with teenagers right now, and I can see teenagers that also struggle with reading. Please don't give up on them. There is still light, there is still opportunity for that child to be able to read. Conclusion and key takeaway. Early detection is crucial for reading success. Multisensory learning supports struggling readers. Digital tools can complement Montessori strategies for literacy development. So, thank you for watching this presentation. I don't know if we have any question or feedback. So I'm going to end my screen share now for us to communicate and give our insights. Okay. Any questions so far? A keynote, something that you've learned? Okay, Mr. Kingsley, I can see your hand. You can speak now. You can unmute yourself and speak.
Hello, everyone. I hope we all had a good time throughout this training session. It's just a simple question. Uh, is this applicable to secondarians who are dyslexic too, or just kids in their developmental stage? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. He said, is this applicable for students or teenagers, or is it just for children within their developmental stage? Yes, yes, yes. It is applicable to teenagers. Like I said, I work with teenagers currently, and I've seen teenagers who struggle with reading. If you identify or see a teenager who struggle or who is struggling with reading, the first thing is identify where the problem is coming from. That is very, very key. Identify where the child is struggling with, where the child is struggling. Is it struggling in oral language? Is it struggling to speak the language? Is it struggling with listening? Is it struggling with writing? Or is it struggling with phonemic awareness? Is it that he cannot sound some particular letters? So when you are able to identify where the teenager is struggling, then you can say, okay, if he's struggling with phonemic awareness, you can now say, okay, we need to go back. Don't assume. Most times where the error is coming from is that they're just pushing the child. They're just pushing. Okay, when you get into the next class, when you get into the next class, don't assume that the child should know this. No. It's very, very wrong to assume, especially as teachers. Don't assume. Give the child some words to read. Start with a sentence. Start with CVC words. Okay, hello, can you please read this sentence for me? Okay, you know that this sentence have more of CVC words. If the child is struggling to read that sentence, then you know that the child has issue with blending. Start from there. The child may look so big. Go back to the foundation. Start from there. The most interesting thing is that the child is going to be more faster than a child of maybe 3 years old. Yes, it's going to be faster in grasping the concept because his brain is much, much more developed than the child or than the 3 years old child. But go back. Yes, it's going to be a lot of work for us as teachers, but please go back. Identify where the problem is coming from and go back so that you know how to take the child and what's the word I want to use now? Watch the child as it's progressing. There should be an assessment. You should be able to assess the child. Okay, this child is struggling with word blends. So once you teach the word blends, give assessment to see, okay, can the child now read word blends? Then before you now progress to the next stage of the reading. Hope I've been able to answer your question.
Yes, perfectly. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other question or contribution? We can share our ideas. Okay, ma'am, you can unmute and talk. I can see your hand. Mrs. Bamjoko, you can speak up.
Thank you very much for your teaching. I can remember when I had a teenager at home. Then he was in, is it not SS1? To be sincere, he cannot read. He cannot read. If I ask him to read, or in the morning to read the Bible, he will just lost. What I did, I bought this book, this nursery book.
Yes,
what
ma'am.
that
should be Queen Primary.
This book, Queen Primary, I bought it for him that he should start from there. A for apple, I want to take it. You know, when I gave him that book, everybody was laughing, and the book helped him.
Yes.
Any day I will give him the book. I will give him a sample. Read this book. When you read, I will give him other things to do from it. And sincerely, it helped him. He picked up. So we should not, according to the way you say, we should not think that because they are teenagers, they are in social class, they cannot go back to the foundation. They can still go back to the foundation and learn from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was very, very insightful. I'm sure we picked something from there. Going back to the foundation, that's very, very important. Don't assume, don't just assume that, oh, this child is supposed to know this. Just go back to that foundation and understand what you expect that child to do, to read. Okay, so Miss Deborah, I can see your hand. Please, you can unmute and speak while I go through our comment session. Miss Deborah Aroshafe, you can go on, ma'am. I think I lost her. She can't hear me. Okay. Is there any other person that wants to share something? Or just something you've learned today? Something new you've learned today? Okay, I'm not getting any response. Should I call names? I'm going to do my classroom style now. Okay, Miss Alaomi, I can see your hand. Please speak up. You can unmute and speak, please. If your hand is up, you can unmute and speak. Okay, I'm not getting any response. All right, thank you so much. I think without wasting much of our time, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for joining. This 1 hour that you spent with me, I do not take it for granted. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really, really appreciate. Okay, for those asking if I can share the PDF, I'm going to get back to us on that on our platform, on our WhatsApp platform. So if you're not on the WhatsApp platform, you can just check through our adverts on our pages. The link is there. So I'm going to get back to us on our WhatsApp platform. So if you have any other question that you want to ask, you can also drop it in. So thank you so much. Indeed, it has been an amazing time. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming. Let me just give us a food for thought as we go on or as we go off. Reading is progressional. It takes time. And when we encounter children that we see that they have this difficulty, they are already frustrated. That's one key fact. They are already frustrated with the fact that they can't read or they can't pronounce words. They are already frustrated. So the best thing we can do for them is that we encourage them, we give them incentives as they accomplish some little milestone in reading. Let us encourage them with some reinforcements. Whatever the reinforcement may be, you can, you can just come up with it. But encourage them with incentive, encourage them with reinforcement, so that they can see that someone is actually intentional about them reading. And before you know, they will come up at you and tell you that, oh, I've been able to do this and this and this and this. So that's just one food for thought for us. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate. Have a lovely afternoon.